But I do want to hit on the self-centeredness a little bit. You know, we view the abortion act as something that's self-centered. If you listen to the arguments made by the people who are pro-abortion, most of them have to do with the impact that the pregnancy is going to have on me, right?
Right.
It's going to impact me negatively in some way. I don't really see a lot of people arguing pro-choice from the perspective of the child, right? So this self-centeredness, in your view, it goes beyond just a mild self-centeredness to something that's far more evil. You want to speak about that?
Yeah. Well, in preparation for this podcast, I watched videos of several women talking about why they had an abortion. And it's just what you said. They felt that the abortion would disrupt the plan that they had for their life. Now, a few caveats there. Sometimes that is not the argument being made. In more extreme cases, although I would say that is the majority of the time the reasoning behind it. And you mentioned that people don't argue for abortion from the child's perspective. And while on the whole they do not, there are those who believe that it is in the child's best interests that they never come into the world, which is perhaps an even more morally bankrupt view of the situation. But leaving that aside, when you think of a child in the womb, there really is nothing that is more innocent and precious than that. The killing of that child, often by brutal means, speaks to something that goes deeper than a desire for convenience. It's not just expediency. I think that it enters into pure malevolence. And this line of thinking has caused me to view abortion as something that is not only sinful but diabolical. And I mean that in the purest sense of the word. Something that is satanic. And as I have alluded to before on this podcast, in this post-Christian society, there is a new religion. And it is the religion of self. It is the deification of self. You are your own God, And that is basically the satanic pride, the satanic conceit. Satan usurps the authority of God. That is what he tries to do. And in service to that God of self, as with all gods, people make sacrifices. And in the case of abortion, they make human sacrifices, child sacrifices. And in that sense, we are no different than the pagans of old, who we regard as so savage. But the irony of it is that we hold that same savagery in our culture today, just dressed up in a more, sophisticated, pseudo-moralistic framework. And, if you're not convinced by that, I would have you know that the Satanic Temple itself.
What is that? Satanic Temple. Who is that? Who is that?
The Satanic Temple is a sect of Satanism. So there's more than one. They take different forms, but the Satanic Temple is one of the most above ground of the satanic cults. And the Satanic Temple actually refers to a real building. If you go to their website, you will find that they regard abortion as a sacred ritual. And in light of the recent Supreme Court decision, they suggest that people cite abortion as a religious ritual so that they can receive an abortion on the basis of religious exemption in the eyes of the law. And they even have instructions on their website as to how to perform the satanic ritual of abortion. So
what you're saying is that at its deepest part, abortion is a human sacrifice to the God of self.
Absolutely.
So that self may flourish.
Absolutely.
And be better off without this other human there. Now, I'm sure when some people hear that, they're going to say, I know someone who had an abortion. They're not a Satan worshiper. They've got nothing to do with the satanic temple. As a matter of fact, they probably know people inside the church who have had an abortion, and we want to minister to those people. We're not trying to put those people in some kind of a hole that gives them a black eye. But I think, can you speak to that just a little bit about the relation between the two, and the people who have never had the thought of satanic worship or some kind of ritual when they think of abortion? What would you say to those people?
Well, I would say, first of all, this world is full of idols. And idolatry is not something that is reserved for those who are unchristian. Idolatry has been practiced by the people of God as long as there have been a people of God. It should come as no surprise to us that Christians engage in idolatrous relationships with other gods. That they've been doing it as long as they can. Beyond that, Satan is the prince of this world. Again, it should come as no surprise to us that his influence would come to bear on this issue. And the third thing that I would say is, look at the hate and vitriol that has poured out of the pro-choice camp in light of this decision. In my mind, it is something that goes beyond the lamentation of the loss of a medical procedure. The kind of things that I have heard some people say, and I'm not putting everyone in this category, but what I've heard some people say is so hateful and spiteful that it's hair-raising. It's not just anger about the loss of a medical procedure. It's anger about the destruction of what they regard as a sacred right. And you know that nothing upsets people more than when you start to mess with their religion.
Yeah. So it's the religion of self, and when you say sacred right, that could be R-I-G-H-T right, or it could be R-I-T-E right.
That's what I mean.
So they're viewing it probably as the R-I-G-H-T right, but in reality, it is a right of self-worship, right?